Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you're sitting in the world. I want to welcome you to our workshop today um, and spend the next 2 hours with me on the topic from continuous improvement to process innovation. My name is Thomas Kohlenbach. I'm the principal consultant at GBTEC here. My job is really looking after customers, being a little bit of a thought leader, sharing my opinion. As a German, it's not hard, but yeah, I try to do my best to be really realistic, what's achievable, how we see things. My background in the industry for the last 15 years, I work somehow in the business process management space. I'm educated through the Toyota finance world. So in there, I was a Kaizen mentor back in Germany. I was privileged to witness the start when Toyota pushed the whole Kaizen continuous improvement motion into the finance world. And finance was always seen as a marketing arm of Toyota because this was how we got cars onto the road. And when this was then addressed within the finance area. So there was a big shift in acceptance, how improvement actually works outside the production world. We will touch on this a little bit and how we go on this. But obviously, over the years, I went on into the business process management space, worked for different companies. I have seen very different tools over the years. And this is not a session where we talk about feature and functions. We are talking a little bit more the bigger picture. Why are things still failing? How can we shift this to the next level? What are our scenario of impact through different trigger points in there as well? But it's not all about me. So we prepared a poll to get a little bit your understanding. So what's your goal for today's session? That would be really cool to get this idea, and maybe you have the chance to answer this. And then secondly, what's your biggest challenge in driving transformation within your organization? So think about transformation maybe a little bit in the wider scenario. It's not always a big transformation scenarios as well. How do I transform myself with a different mindset, open mindset or closed mindset? How do we do this? I was listening to a podcast this morning, or more an interview than a podcast, from an All Blacks coach here in New Zealand, where I live, and he explained how a team can transform and how shifting a closed mindset into an open mindset shifts as well the performance in a team. And when we translate this into the workplace and how we operate in a workplace, so this becomes actually quite important, how we are dealing with each other, and how are we connecting, and how do we work to our strengths in there. And then thirdly as well, how critical is implementing a business process management tool for your organization in the coming months? You might have something, you might not have something, you might have a tool where you think, oh yeah, that's very specialized. Keep in mind there are hundreds of tools on the market. I always operate on the mindset every single tool has a sweet spot. Every single tool has a scenario where it was designed for, with an underlying culture, with an underlying purpose for it. Therefore, you need to think, where does that fit? Or in your selection of a tool, how does that fit on your requirements? Requirements in this space is the most important thing to think about, that your requirements are actually looked after, and that you have a true North Star. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? And can I have a relationship with the vendor over the time to achieve my goals? This is really, really important in this game. In the meantime, let's have a look into our agenda of today. So the agenda is really where I'm already in. Welcome and introduction. I will tell you a little bit more. Who is GBTEC? What are we standing for? These sort of scenarios. Then we are looking into how we measure this, what I was just talking about. requirements, how mature are we, where do we want to move these things. There is a tool around which is related to a business process management maturity levels. Then we definitely talk a bit around enterprise architecture and innovation. We see definitely in the market a shift since AI becomes the forefront of every conversation we have, that data becomes more and more important. The cleanness of data, how we manage data. It was always there, right? But now the shift when we are talking agentic AI or chatbots, and where's the data stored? Where do we look for information? How do we expose our data? Are we pushing or are we pulling? All of these scenarios in there. And then the question as well, how do we create governance and processes in the future with the phrase, is the human being in the loop, on the loop? So all of these scenarios coming in place somewhere or another. We will not have time in going all the details and all into this scenario, but we will touch on a couple of things, and I'm obviously more than happy to have later then conversation as well offline or in the Q&A session, which will happen later today. And then I picked a, for me personally, very interesting topic, the iron triangle. The iron triangle is more commonly known from the classic project management space. So this is like your time, scope, cost. Change one thing, it will change the others. I don't give more away. We will visit this topic more out of the vision. How is process actually helping you there? And how is process impacting this iron triangle? Because let's face it, everyone from us is more or less continuously in some projects. So therefore, this becomes a quite important thing. Okay, and I have for sure a couple of housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, there's a Q&A function, there's an audience chat, so please use this. We will have some breaks in between. I try to be reasonable where I can fit it in. And we definitely have as well a proper follow-up with a survey, which is quite important for me because I always want to learn what can I do better and want to hear your opinion. So, and don't be shy on this. That's, you can't offend a German. We can take criticism. Criticism is for me not really a negative thing. It's actually always looking, where can I improve? How can I self-reflect on these scenarios? Okay, let's jump in. Who are we? So GBTEC. GBTEC is a company, it's 20 years around. We see ourselves really as an AI-powered business transformation and process excellence suite. We are a product out of, have a platform out of different products, and you can choose what you want to use. And some are really natively sitting together. And this is what I'm talking about there. It's our BIC platform, our business information center. So where you have your process design, there's where you map, manage, and model your processes. Then we have our enterprise architecture management. Yes, that sits natively together on one platform. There's no interface needed or anything like this. And then we have our execution engine, where this can be then automated via a mouse click. And if we have enough time in the demo, in the live demo, I will show you how easy that looks like, at least the starting point of it. What I said, we are 20 years in the market. Our two founders, they come out of the process world. They used to work with a big company in Germany and then thought, oh, we can make this more interactive and more user-friendly. And that was the birthplace of GBTEC. And it's really focusing on how do we not only making sure that we can map out end-to-end processes, customer journeys, and all of these sort of things, but it's as well, how can we motivate people to use process, right? So the end user interaction. And there is really where we get a lot of positive feedback and getting this information back from our customers. This is where the reflection is sits then in the NPS score. So that's your net promoter score. And this is where we are quite proud of, right? Over the years, we are servicing over 1,500 plus customer, growing. What I said, in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, very long around. In the other part of the world, we are growing here in Australia and New Zealand. We are around for the last 4 or 5 years. We are operating with 350, in the meantime, 380 employees globally. A couple of, showcase slides. What are we talking here? Where are our customers? So in our region here, Auto General, REST Superannuation, MIOB, Horizon Power as an energy provider. But then as well, when we're going further into the world, there are quite some impressive logos. When I joined GBTEC in January, I was quite impressed how far this drives and how different the use cases actually are in the organization. We are clearly as well recognized by the normal scenario from a Gartner quadrant and as well from Capterra and other reviews. It's quite important, but to be honest, if you're not there, you're not playing in this area really good. So you need to be always on the radar, what's going on, and being at the forefront. I seriously can say it's a very impressive platform out of my view. You have a lot of use cases, a lot of flexibility within there. So that's really a pleasure to see that this is all possible. Okay, park this for a little bit later. Today, let's talk a little bit more on the challenges out there. So what we hear over the events where we are going to the customer opportunities we are talking with, it's really the transformation is louder than ever, right? So because the AI game comes in and a lot of leaders in the organization want to transform to a technology company. It doesn't matter if you're manufacturing or if you're selling services. It's really thinking about what's the driver. Data is key, right? The cleanness of data, how you manage your data, how you get your data insights. So the technology advantage becomes really imminent. So you need to review, and a lot of leaders review their architecture, their applications. Can we consolidate? How are we going on in these scenarios? So it becomes really important. Then the increase in efficiency with lower costs, that becomes an important game. Here in New Zealand, where I live, we definitely see over the last 3 years, we are always in and out a little bit out of a recession. It's definitely hard for small and medium business, which is the core of New Zealand economy. We definitely see challenges there. And when I talk to the New Zealand leaders, it's really where they want to be more efficient, but need to have a tight view on the cost scenario. Then we have the regulatory requirements. This is where from outside, all of a sudden new regulations are coming in. One big for the finance industry and insurance industry in Australia recently was CPS 230. That's the regularity when you're under EPRA, and that's your controlling body. There is where you know what I'm talking about. This changed the requirements. This was really driven by a review from the government and making sure that everything runs smoothly, and there are the regulations and everyone needs to follow. So if this gets pushed in, this drives a transformation effort or drives a transformation start and thinking, how do we reach this? What's needed? Reviewing all of these scenarios. And then increase customer expectations. So I'm not an easy customer of anyone, right? Because I expect high customer service and I want to give high customer service. So for me, my brain is really always on customer. So how do we make this happen? A lot of organizations saying, yes, we are a customer first organization, but do they really listen what the customer wants? Are we really reactive how customer change their buying behavior, their consumption behavior? Big question mark. On this slide, we definitely see a little bit the answer to this because we have a huge percentage of failure in this space. So this is really surprising, right? Because we know that we need to transform. There are drivers, as we just saw, but we have a high percentage of failure. So there must be a challenge there which we either don't address correctly or we are not serious, or the leadership says, yeah, we do, and then there's no 100% commitment in there. So the lack of transparency is definitely something what McKinsey and company identified, that there is an not really looking into your process, into your operational model and all of these scenarios. So it's a little bit like, oh yeah, we do this, but we are half-hearted in. And then the problem is like outdated systems, right? So we are relying on systems, but we are not managing them. So there's where, oh yeah, we will see this. So one thing, what I learned over 20 years living in New Zealand and coming out of Germany, Germany was very structured and very controlled in some cases. And when I came to New Zealand, it was the mentality, oh yeah, will work, give it a go, we'll be there. But to be fair, both systems have their pluses and minuses. So from an innovative thinking, New Zealand is definitely there of trying things and we give it a go and so on. But then from the control mechanism afterwards and being more specific and more executable, there's maybe an improvement opportunity there. On the other side, in Germany, it was always so far regulated, even within the company, without regulations around this, that you were not able to move, not able to drive innovation and things. To be fair, over the last 20 years, things changed, right? Because everyone needs to adapt. And then 80% was as well, and this is a moment where I take my picture out of here because I will overlay some information. Okay, I'm back in the game. I go one slide back before I transition there. Now you should be able to hear me, and that should be all good. Can please someone confirm that you are able to hear me? Hello? Can someone hear me? Hello? So currently we see on the slides that we have what I talked about. Okay, so I'm back in the game. Sorry for this. We use a new tool and I must have clicked on the wrong scenario. My mistake. Sorry for that. So what I was saying, we struggle with the no strategy alignment to the transformation. So making sure that there is an alignment to make this work. So the last couple of months, I looked into some conversation and some scenarios. How can I add some value here, and how can I build some thought patterns for you to think about how can we make this better, right? So when I go, or when we go from GBTEC side to events, we always hear people talking about digital transformation and all of these things, but it's never really broken down and never really thought through how we actually go ahead on this. So I really like this breakdown. And so when we take this, in the first instance is like the definition of digital transformation. So McKinsey went back and said and did a survey around this, and 96%, 69% of organizations define digital transformation as a tool for improving process efficiency. 23% see digital transformation as a tool for developing new ways to sell products and services. And only 8% think of it as a developing business model change. So that's clearly a little bit of a problem, right? So when we break this now down into what kind of transformation are we actually facing? So if you're going from starting on the left side here, from the process transformation. So we think how work gets done by leveraging digital technologies to streamline tasks and improvement. It's not only thinking about, oh, this is how we done this, and now we need to do this slightly different. We need clearly to put on our innovation head, right? So not just because we have a PDF and now it sits on our website, this is digital transformation. No, it's not. It's just moving the same thing in a different format. But this makes definitely sense to get an open-mindedness and thinking really around how can I transform this, thinking about the transformation. Business model transformation. So this is again a very different scenario of the whole model how we operate. So therefore, we need to understand our end-to-end processes. It's not enough just looking into the accounts payable process or accounts receivable process. We need to understand the finance process because we need to understand the inputs, the outputs, the handovers. How is the effect going into the different functions of an organization? If your organization is functional structured, and you have a true deep understanding how functional flow works, then you see this scenario is even more important because when you build your end-to-end processes, you build your customer journey mapping and you build your touch points, then you have data on your hands to actually think through how can we serve better what we want to actually to do. This leads then into the cultural and organizational transformation, right? So this is where this closed mindset, open mindset comes into play. How do I transition my workforce? I told so far we are working this way to an open mindset and question how we work. So in the Toyota finance world or in the Toyota world, there are the 5 whys. You are empowered to question the status quo, all this. This doesn't happen automatically. This needs to be supported through a framework. And I'll come back to this a little bit later. But culture in an organization supports your transformation journey and supports the success of transformation extremely. So when you have a transformation manager, big change managers, all of these scenarios, they have to have these days a high EQ. They have to have a group of people living to their strengths. A person who has a high EQ is potentially not the best with a data scientist. Can happen, but the percentage is not that high. So thinking about this is really important. Customer experience transformation. Talking to your customers. I remember a use case many years ago. I worked with a local government entity in South Australia, and the risk manager was responsible for embedding a new system and making sure everything is focusing on the ratepayer, on their end customer. Before she started, she went out into the community and talked to their customers, small businesses. What is your expectation? Really surveying them in a one-on-one conversation, and then had a community hall to talk about what needs to achieve. This information was flowing into the setup of the system, was into the delivery, into the output, in the service provided. When we're thinking about scaling this up and you are a global entity, it's reasonably hard to go out to all your customers or suppliers and so on. But when you break this down into smaller chunks, there are opportunities there. There are companies around which are specialized on this to deliver you the answer. It's just the question, are you willing actually to listen to your customer? So it's just, what I said, a couple of thought patterns. Domain transformation, that's not for everyone, right? But the classic example, Amazon, where was Amazon many, many years ago? Online bookstore. Where's Amazon today? Here in New Zealand, I think we are talking building a data center which drives AI massively. So this is, you see, this is where the transformation of a business model takes place. And there are many examples in there. Apple is a good example, Tesla, all of these big companies, they transformed their domain, right? They are not standing still. They're looking for other opportunities. It's not, what I said, it's not for everyone, but there are innovative scenarios there. Many years ago, there were a lot of finance companies who looked for different finance model, and there were one where I was personally exposed to. I would say in the Toyota finance world, I had a good idea what products were offered around the world. When I came to New Zealand, I learned that we have a revolving credit facility for a car finance. That doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. This is a New Zealand developed product and it's well received by the customer. So because Toyota Finance here in New Zealand went out and listened what is the customer needs. And this is definitely something what is well received. Germany, no one would be interested in this because the whole finance model works very differently. And then the ecosystem transformation, creating a network of partners. We're seeing this now coming through as well. You are not alone there. So sharing, this is maybe for the big companies a little bit more difficult. But on the other hand, when you look at the real big companies, BPs, ExxonMobil, and so on, they have a strong seat at the table when it comes to global pressure on oil and gas production. So break this down into smaller things. How can your organization work with other organizations in the same industry and driving transformation and living a new space? My last word, because I had so long, over 17 years work experience with Toyota Finance, I just read an article. They changed their business model. They are not a classic finance company anymore. They are a mobility company, right? So they are now looking how do they support the customer to be mobile. So you can clearly finance and lease cars, but you can hire a car. You can actually have a car on the go with the barcode. So it changed the scenario quite a bit in there. When we are looking into the transformation engine and breaking this down, who are the drivers in there and going a little bit into this, okay, we can, we must, and we can't, right? So who are the audience there? Who is actually driving this from the role perspective? So when you take the slide before with the domains, what we can do transform, and you talk to the people who are actually doing this, there's some challenges there, right? So we have the what we can. It's really the ambassadors, right? The customer experience experts, the creative technologists, the writer, creators, learners. So this is where it really comes down to, okay, we derive this, and then you have clearly an in very speech mark dictatorship from the C-level because we must change. And this conversation or communication and change management changed over the years dramatically. I would say 30, 40, or not quite yet 40, 35 years ago when I entered the workspace, it was clearly, this is what you do. You work as fast as you can. Don't make any mistake. And these days, it's more explaining the why and why are we doing this and how we are getting actually there. And the C-level should be actually the communicator in this, putting the message out, but please don't just send an email and hope everyone understands this. This is a communication, and therefore we have people in the business doing this. And then the enablers, right? How do we drive this? So the product experts, how do we drive this differently? What's possible technology-wise? Because technology doesn't stand still. And we can't just all jump on agent AI and we don't have a proper strategy in there. It feels a little bit that is what we're doing, but we shouldn't really do this. Then from the customer experts, system experts, so bringing really the subject matter experts in play. And if we do this properly together and understanding what true transformation actually means, then we can be not only shifting from paper into digital, which a lot of companies still see as transformation, we can shift actually into a very innovative thinking and driving our workforce forward and working with together as team and going through this through the motion in here. So let's go one step further, because we still, to achieve this, we still need to understand where are we starting from? What's our status quo right this second? And for a long time, I think about, okay, what are the best measures of doing this? How can we actually truly say as an organization, we know what our capacity is, we know what our workforce is able to deliver, we know what our gaps are, and we know what we need to do. And I would say the best what I still have seen is the business process management maturity model, because you can break this down into multiple different things. So don't take everything what you see here, okay, I pick everything apart and then I'm there. Think about as starting points to think, how do I apply this to my organization? I think there are a couple of real big scenarios in there. The first one is more on the lower end, so where you see the slightly darker pink slides where it's reactive to proactive. That's one of the most important steps where you can easily measure what's your organization, where are we standing? Are we still reacting to challenges? It's more like organization, some functions or departments have problems coming to you, to a center of enablement, center of excellence, to continuous improvement teams, and are complaining, this is not working, this is not working, and you potentially as a function react to this, categorize this, prioritize this, work through your catalog, and try to solve these problems. This is like your reactive, right? Your firefighter. When you are going through the gate of being proactive, you are going way ahead, right? Because you are thinking actively and working actively potentially on your customer delivery, on your customer experience, and looking, for example, into your customer service scenario, or as a claims management scenario for an insurance or for a health provider. How can we help there to give a better customer experience? So this gets a real different flair and helps you more having an impact into what actually counts. Because what counts at the end is the customer, because the customer, we want to make a customer coming back to us experience the same or better level of delivery of our service or product, and only then customers building a relationship and coming back to us. So if there is a very inconsistent delivery, that doesn't work. Can we deliver faster these days? Yes, we can. I had a very personal experience yesterday. My daughter goes overseas for an exchange half year for university, and she needs to open up a bank account in Germany. And I went to the internet, found an application form from a big German bank, filled this out, no response. Called the bank, oh, this service is not anymore available since 2023. It's on their website. I Googled further, I found a provider, online account opened within 10 minutes. So there's a huge difference, right? So the experience with this big German bank was not great, because the service was still on their website. I was still able to download a 20-page document, which you needed to print out, fill out, scan in, sign, and so on. So it was a really bad experience within there. So thinking about this makes clearly, yeah, a good way to get started. When we're looking at the business process management maturity model and thinking about we want all to be on a level 5, right? This is where the North Star should be. Do we ever achieve this, all of us? No, we don't, because of 100 different reasons. But we should have the aim, because only when we know what is gold class or gold standard or platinum, then we can work towards and we can go on and on. And sometimes we slip back, right? So we need to deal with the disappointments and with potentially setbacks of canceled funding or scenario. Um, we had as well a conversation to a company who acknowledged clearly a process is a failure. We need to have something. We need to work. They employed a very experienced general manager to look after it. But all of a sudden the business broke away. So the funding was not there to drive this. So they needed to park this. They needed to let the general manager go. So there was a real impact of the scenario, which are sitting outside our control sometimes. So we need to be realistic. So, but to give you a helping hand in this as well is we have an QR code, and please feel free, use your phone. You can download these scenarios, and we have putting a little bit our GBTEC player on this. So when you go to the BPMN handbook and look at a true business process model, this is baked into here, but we added a little bit more from a digitalization and a little bit from a risk and compliance scenario in there. Because these days we can't just only solely looking into process only. Process becomes more an inclusive and enabler and becomes not the boring old fashioned I map something, I document something, and then I put it on the shelf. There over this, I will talk a little bit later, but you already listened to me for 40 minutes and I have much more to say, but I give you a quick 5-minute break and get a coffee, or maybe because it's only 40 minutes, I'm really not generous today, and I will try to reduce this to 3 because we can do this in 3 minutes and start this. So I will mute myself and be back with you in 3 minutes when I get the clock actually started. Here we go. This morning seems not to be the technology morning. I'm not quite sure what happened to the clock, but I hope you are all back. And there was one question in there that my image covered the QR code. I will go back to the slide and I try to take my image off. So hopefully that worked for you. And yeah, so, okay. A couple of scenarios came up beforehand in the Q&As is availability of process information. How do we influence stakeholders? How do we do certain things? And I will touch on this a little bit later, so stay tuned. And by the way, you definitely get a copy of the presentation, so you will definitely get a proper follow-up so that we everything have. I just got informed we have a hard stop in an hour 15, so I better get moving. So continuous improvement and process optimization. So this is really things where I think we are entering a zone here where people are talking improvement and optimization in the same breath. So I thought there's actually a need to clarify what's the difference. So, and yes, there is a difference. So the key difference here is really process improvement, focusing on making things better step by step. So going through this motion and so on. Process optimization focus much more on making things as efficient as possible. So it's really requires a more radical or technological, oh my God, lost in translation here, overhaul to reach the highest level of performance. So slightly different scenario, and it's a fine nuance. And I know that over years terminology goes just into it. I remember everyone talks about Lean Six Sigma, but Lean and Six Sigma are very different disciplines, and they can complement each other actually quite well as well. Side note on this only. So if you're breaking this further down, and I don't want to read through this table, and what I said, you will get this scenario quite to you so that you have this on your hands. So it's really thinking through and being precise will always help you as well. And this might be for yourself when you are working in an improvement role or into a center of excellence, being clear what is achieved, what are we needing, because you never know what your conversation partner, what is their understanding of things. Are they more really educated and know the differentiation between improvement and optimization? Or is this actually like an open conversation? Within the starting point in 2001, when Toyota introduced the continuous improvement Toyota production system, Kaizen, into the finance world, the main aim of Kaizen was building a mindset, building an improvement mindset. So it's really getting the culture change going first, allowing people to ask questions and challenging the status quo. So this is a very important scenario. If you don't have the culture impact and don't have the scenario, how do you want to make people feel that they are heard and that they are working in a safe environment? So when we are looking into the benefits, what you drive with this is really an improvement should actually turbocharge your efficiency driver, right? So this should be definitely driving and thinking about this, because even if the definition differentiates this, it plays nicely hand in hand. It creates clearly excellence, because when we are having following the 101 on continuous improvement, you need to make your process visible, right? So people need to see, you need to have access to the processes. And there are hurdles some organizations putting in place, how to share, how to interact in all of these scenarios. But that's to overcome, and it's possible. And I will show you a couple of things what's possible as well. Having an innovation HQ, and I pack this a little bit because I come back to the innovation side of things. Budget booster, right? So I can show ROI. I can show really quickly what can we save if we cut waste out. Working smarter is one starting point, right? It's really not always, oh, have a solution and don't even know the root cause yet. So root cause analysis, all of this comes clearly into play. So there is a methodology in play which needs to be embedded and needs to be communicated, and people need to be trained in it, that they actually get to this mindset. And don't overcomplicate this, don't over engineer this, but it needs to be at least understood. If I cut something out, I need to understand the flow on effect. I need to understand the impact on a service level agreement, or I need to understand what it means to my internal customer, the department where I deliver this to. So that's definitely a very important component to think about this. Then team power up, team power, bringing up inclusiveness, right? Not everyone jumps on board, but there are normally, you're talking about the 20-60-20 relationship, 20 superstar, 60 normal follower, and then you have your 20% blockers. But you have 80% to work with, so do that. The light factor, right? You are showing, you put the limelight on you. Hey, there's a team, or there are people working on helping us to move forward, making a difference for the customer, making my life easier. Oh, you eliminated this report because we have technologies there. Someone spent an hour on Power BI to create a nice report instead of me crawling through Excel spreadsheets. These sort of things make definitely help. Risk proofing, risk profiles these days becoming extremely hard with the introduction of AI, right? How are we want to evaluate our risk exposure if we don't have really an understanding where the data is stored, where the data comes from, where's our data exposed? In Europe with the GDPR scenario, which flies as well into our area, depending how the companies are structured, the AI Act in the European Union is a clear indicator. I'm pretty confident we will see something in our region in a similar way, not that in the far future. And then clearly future proofing. So how do we drive this and making this actually okay in a year or two, right? It doesn't mean we don't change on the journey, but we want to make sure that the fix is not like a hot fix and it will be fine, and we glue it on the side and it falls off by nighttime. Maybe not that great. So thinking root cause analysis and all of this comes into play 100%. When we are going then into the business process management today, and what I said before the break was really, BPM or business process management was a champion of efficiency, right? So we were always on it and saying, yeah, we need to clean up current state, future state, and doing all of this. Everyone was on there. Over the 15 years that I'm in the business, I have only seen once a person really nearly tearing up and jumping on the table and saying, yes, let's do process mapping. Doesn't happen. Not a lot of people are that excited about this. But in today's world, it doesn't reward organizations for just running smoothly, right? It rewards those who can actually adapt swiftly and experiment safely on change and having this continuously doing. So what we are talking here is really thinking about, you need to be agile. Therefore, you might, or you need to have something where you can model your future out without interrupting the operations. So simulations, thinking about, what if we buy a new company, instead of processing 50 applications today or 500 applications today, and tomorrow it's 1500. How does this impact our resources? Don't we want to do this in a safe place first before we actually going through there and going live instantly, or just in theory? We need to prove our return of investment. We need to think about this. Many years ago, there was a starting point talking about the digital twin. This comes back with AI quite a bit, right? Because we are experienced that we creating different business models. We need to test them out in a safe environment. And we need to have, for example, here in the BIC world, we refer to different repositories. You could actually do this all in the background and then testing it and simulate this through and then invite business in there and seeing how the future could look like and getting buy-in and user acceptance. So there's a lot of capability in modern tools these days. When we are looking then as well, doing this all in the background and going through this, it's here, it's really this, it frees up employees' brain space, right? Because we are trying to improving things, so eliminating waste and making it clean. What's in it for the business, or what's in it for the person? This is where very important to communicate, because the biggest gift is always time, right? Because everyone is busy, everyone is under workload, all of these scenarios. So when we are going through there and making this happen, it needs to be understood. We are improving, we are giving you more time. Then it gives more headspace and driving on how can we innovate, and having this innovative thinking is very different than looking only for, or we can cut out this report and doing this in Power BI and we're doing this in Tableau and we're doing this somewhere else. Who cares, right? It's working smoothly going through, but maybe we need to do something very different. So that's where innovation is very different from an just improvement and efficiency gain, optimization gain in here. If we are looking into the classic improvement game, and this is just again something where I would like you to think about and not just taking this and saying, yeah, that's a greatest thing. It's not, right? Because again, underlying the culture needs to fit. If you are going just with a Kaizen model and following the Toyota production system and bringing this in, you might be not successful because the culture is not there. Trust me, the Toyota manufacturer felt this many years ago really heavily when they brought the first production line into Turkey and identified really quickly that the quality of delivery was not as high as in a production line in Japan, because the culture was very different. And I'm not saying that Turkish people are working less thorough, it's just different. And there are different disciplines in play and scenarios. So thinking about this, keeping this in mind when we are building this and having a structure which comes up very traditionally with the problem solving cycle. So this PDCA, plan, do, check, and act. So you secure the leadership commitment. And I saw one question is like, how do we influence leaders? Trust me, every leader has KPIs. Every leader has drives what they want to achieve. Every leader has an ego. So they want to shine. You just need to find the right language and you need to find the right drivers. And this might be in the production side or in the supply chain shrinkage, that you always know where products are, in which warehouse, that we don't lose products, or rework, or waiting time on delivering a signed contract, a finance contract going out, or payment of a claim for an insurance customer. This should be sweet and really flawless, right? My daughter lost a phone, or got a phone, not lost, stolen many years ago, and the insurance company within 2 days, she had a confirmation she can buy or can get a new phone from Harvey Norman here in New Zealand. So this was a brilliant customer experience. So thinking about this, identify a pilot project. Where do you want to go first? So don't go big bang everywhere and we're bringing a new platform in and we're doing all of this, and that doesn't work. So create success, show success, communicate success. Form a cross-functional team, super important. Many organizations going just in one team because we know each other and therefore it's easier. But when you do cross-function, you are instantly looking into handovers. And I haven't seen any organizations where handovers are smooth. There's expectation from the one side, there's delivery expectation from the other side, and this is not always matching. So input-output scenario, there's normally the biggest opportunity to improve, reducing time, reducing rework. Going and provide training. This is important, right? Understanding, why do we need to ask the why question? And not only once. In theory, we should ask it 5 times. Sounds easy, but try it. If you have a problem, ask 5 times why this problem occurs. The answer from the first question is your next why for the next one. So the first 3 whys, normally quite easy, and then it goes a little bit deeper and you need to really think hard. Follow the PDA cycle. This is really like a A3. On the internet, everywhere, have a look, documentation, online form. There's where people can learn and can see what's actually make a difference. Document, share, and then expand, right? So drive this further. This can be bigger projects, right? Follow the discipline. Within the Toyota world, we had always A3s, right? This was referred to the summary of a big project. So this is definitely a really good way to make a difference. So let's now look into the innovation side. So this is where it's a big differentiation for an improvement and innovate, right? So by definition, innovation is something new, was never there. We do something which we don't potentially have experience. Reality is we have experience from what we're doing. We are working in an environment, insurance, bank, manufacturing. We can't just go from a manufacturer overnight into a finance. We could, but this is a big transformation, right? So again, thinking through if this is an aim where you want to go, that's definitely something I would think about. One thing what I personally learned as well, where culture and innovation is a culture and similar to an improvement mindset, you need to have an innovation mindset, and not everyone is a great innovator. But what I personally learned as well, the birthplace of an organization and the culture, what comes with it, influence as well how your growth will be seen and will be received internationally. If you are starting as a small startup in New Zealand and counter the world, or you start in California and you go the other way, it's a very different receiving end on the rest of the countries in the world. So this plays definitely into mind. But having an open mind, allowing a safe environment, allow to fail quickly. I remember 6, 7 years ago, companies had innovation budgets. I haven't come across organizations which are still where a budget is still available and purely to burn for innovation. Because let's face it, innovation is failure because we need to learn and then innovate further and further. Who would have thought that it's possible to get a rocket back to the launch station in one piece? I'm still questioning in my head if this was fake news or if this was reality. But it looked really great when we saw this happen on TV. But hey, these things is clearly innovation in there. And there is clearly a continuous innovation framework connected to this as well. And now I have again challenges with my image, and I try to do something. Remove them. If I somehow the system doesn't allow me to remove my image without getting automatically muted. That's maybe a user error, but what I said, I will definitely share the slides with you on this as well. So when we are looking at this, and I want to have the focus really on the innovation process, because the framework and how its impact and how the transition is, it depends a little bit where you are coming from. But identify the need, ideas, and business case, important, right? We can even build an program for the best innovators. In the tech industry, hackathons are a very common innovation engine, right? Where people are coming together from different development teams around the world and working for a week on new functionality, never been seen, right? And that's the birthplace where something new comes in. And this is possible for everyone. right? This is not only for IT people. This is really something where everyone should put in there. And how can we serve our customer better? How can we make a differentiation to our from our competitors? How do we go on with this? So all of these scenarios becoming extremely important to be relevant in the industry. And thinking about this from a business process management perspective and from a platform perspective, being a platform came out of the innovation thinking. You know, in the early stage, it was all modular. Everyone needed to have different models, and then the problem was, how do we integrate? And a lot of organizations have in the tech world still the problem of integration. There are whole companies around who have specialized their operations on integration, right? How do we integrate A with B? So these companies are massive, right? So they are definitely, it's a buck to make in the industry. Then there was this whole innovation, are we building apps, right? And there was a big ticket item for the developer, I built an app for you. Look at AI today. App building, app design and building an app, depending on your quality and what you want to achieve and on your use case, can happen in 10 minutes. So it's really interesting where innovation brought us and where these scenarios comes in. One thing what I found and want to put it out there, just in some cases, you have new innovation happening. Like I remember when the first announcement from OpenAI came in and what happened now and how many other AI engines are now on the market and so on. So there is a huge driver on this. And the driver in the most cases is obviously profit and earnings and the market opportunity scenarios. And as a critical thinker, you need to see as well both sides of the coins, right? Because innovation brings good, but it can have as well some challenges. But this drives us to another innovation component. I'm pretty sure you're aware how much energy gets used through AI. And for example, another one would be Bitcoin mining. So the energy usage is quite high, but there's already work going on. How can we solve this problem to make this actually work and sustainable? So all of these scenarios are out there. If I break this down into a little bit smaller scenario and bring the focus on what's happened within GBTEC, we are definitely try to innovate really hardly on our AI engine and how we bring this, to market in there. So it's really, and this is, and if you know, and this is an automation which I didn't like, but anyway, I go now once back. It's really where we developed Arti. So Arti is our little robot, which is actually the AI engine behind the scenes, and we are developing always on this. And when we are looking into this, we are really getting more and more AI powered because it's a time saver and time is money and time is convenience and no one wants to spend anything. Side note, you know, people or kids in our time, teenagers in our times, they are spending so much time on mobile devices and on reels and on all of these scenarios. You know, our whole communication and absorption of information changed. So all of these scenarios we need to bring into modern technology where our teenagers today, when they enter the workforce and work from somewhere, and they are sitting potentially hardworking on a beach in Vietnam or in Cambodia or in Thailand, that's definitely possible these days. That doesn't mean just because I live in Vietnam and work from Vietnam that I'm a lazy bugger and I join the paradise. I'm still a hard worker because I still deliver what I like to do, and I deliver this to timeframes where I want to be employed in. So it's really a more flexible scenario, and this was only possible through innovation and different drivers which drove us in there. And that's one out of my view a positive output out of the COVID scenario because only then everyone needed to work from home. And all of a sudden, we have different thinking how we work and how we come together. And this can actually help. And AI is even more exciting from the innovation perspective. In our platform here, from a GBTEC, from a big platform, we are really putting AI in the center. And I will show you a couple of things when we get into the tool, but it's really bringing this as well natively together from a business process management, empowering you to drive proper process transformation, and the enterprise architecture to make this really plannable and manageable from a scenario, and then drive potentially as well your execution, your automation through there. And then we have clearly a couple of other scenarios where we can drive this in with a deep data mining and task mining, and brand new off the press as well, a compliance management scenario within data mining, which is super exciting, and binding this then into our GRC scenario. So this becomes a really very complex, or not complex, comprehensive platform to deal with a lot of use cases in there. So just some of the use cases which you all, everyone from you guys have seen and have worked through and being exposed to. So I don't need to read through this, but this is definitely something I would always think about, and making sure that we actually knowing what we are doing, focusing on what we need to achieve and how we actually achieve this, and get the right people involved and the right technology involved in this. Instead of going into the next break, I will continue, because this is just a little bit of time which I want to spend a little bit longer in the tool. Hopefully you don't mind. So when we are looking into the enterprise architecture and innovation management, it's really an area where we entered by September last year. So thinking of, okay, how can actually business process management and architecture play together and make it actually better? And to be fair, in my past life on business process management, I haven't been exposed to enterprise architecture that much. And I always thought, oh, the enterprise architect makes this really complex. And they're always like a little bit more the blocker than enabler. But oh my God, was I wrong, right? So thinking through what mindset comes with an architect, and what mindset are we bringing from the business and managing our operational processes, and then rolling them up into end-to-end processes and into other viewpoints from an customer journey and other scenarios. So when we are looking into the disciplines, we still want to bring people, process, and technology together, right? And building our center of excellence. But the capabilities, what the business brings to the place, the data, what our applications are holding, and how we manage this, becoming super important. And why? And I literally was not that open-minded in the past. Why shouldn't that play better together? And if these are two separate tools, it's really hard to see. So we really need to open our minds there, and bringing deep integration, or ideally living together in one tool, is actually key for this to be super successful. Because when we are going through this and thinking about business process transformation and enterprise architecture, we have this overlap. We're really bringing this there into the play to have a real holistic view how this can make a difference for our organizations. Nothing is worse when we have dead bodies lying around in our application side of things, or we miss the part of support. How many times have I heard in my lifetime, oh, this is not supported for Microsoft anymore, but it's still in operation because it supports our ERP system, and we can't afford to switch this off. But if this is the case, we are exposed, because if this is not supported from the provider, we have definitely a higher risk that something goes wrong, because not supported means bug fixes and other things are not or further development will not take place. Bug fixes potentially will take place. If we are looking into the key success strategies to avoid failure in your enterprise architecture is really this classic scenario as everything else. Strategy and culture needs to be aligned. Otherwise, why would you do this? Technology agility. So you need to have people really looking into what state of the art, what can we do, what do we have, how can we deliver with our existing one, do we need something new? I think, or I thought until 2 weeks ago, most organizations are going away from having a lot of applications and focusing and bringing and consolidate because of cost and of other drivers, vendors to a minimum. But I have talked to some organizations over the last 2 weeks which have everything, which have multiple overlapping technology in some capacity or other. So it's really an interesting space. Driving clearly the continuous improvement. The governance is a big space of change right this second for me. I was always a big supporter of a clear governance and bringing this in, and nothing changed there. You need governance, you have clear rules, you have clear engagement, you know who are the players, where it goes through governance boards, making decisions, making clear adjustments. Bringing AI now in, this will change the governance space. I'm not sure where the journey goes yet, and I will need to evaluate this a little bit further and see different opinions and have more conversations, but it will be really interesting to hear your opinion on, and maybe share this with me in an email afterwards, but definitely. Stakeholder engagement, super important, right? But it's what I said, it's hard. It's not knock on the door, write an email, here, Mr. Boss, we need to have this, you need to come to the party. They don't. Find the triggers, find the KPIs, find what they are caring for, what makes a difference for a leader. Find these scenarios. This might be not a clear visual driver where you say, oh, I have continuous improvement in my KPIs. Most leaders don't, but they have a drive for or an increase of efficiency by 20%. That's driven through innovation and continuous improvement, optimization. We just heard about this. And having executive sponsors in there, when you find these guys and making this to the executive level, to the GM level, to the top notch, and having true support there, that makes a difference. If they really understand how this all comes together, this becomes very easier. I've seen too many times where, and no offense, foot soldiers like me try to fight the windmills, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, the novel, where it's always fighting the windmills, always fights the giants. This is how it feels, right? If you don't get the support from the top, that's where it becomes really the difference. From us, this is where really the integrated approach makes all the difference, right? So there are so many single tools around floating, and we want to bring this through on a platform. So this is where, in a real practical, what does that actually mean that it sits on the true platform? So when you are mapping or modeling a process and you're using an artifact, an application, let's say this is your Microsoft Navision or Outlook, and you pull this into your diagram. So it's related now in this diagram in your model. The architect has access and manage this catalog. So the architect can understand which processes uses which application, which helps them to understand developing, for example, disaster recovery plans, business continuity plans, understanding the deep life cycle management. What happens if something new comes in? Let's say, and this is highly unlikely, but let's say someone comes in, new CEO, and says, I will not work with Microsoft, we are going all on Google Suite. How do you figure out where Microsoft applications are used and what's the impact and what's your business capability? All of this sits in your enterprise architecture, but it needs to be as well connected to the process world. Otherwise, it will get really challenging when they are not connected. A lot of conversation, a lot of different not aligned frameworks, all of these scenarios coming into play. The 6 steps to success of IT transformation is bringing this together. And I will not read through all of this, but the first line is important. This visualize, analyze, define, structure, deploy, and optimize. This is really where we need to get to make this really a successful interaction. And I like one quote quite nicely: embedded enterprise architecture into your execution process. You know, architects are business outcome driven. Architects cannot, after all, be off the side drawing diagrams without being useful to the business. They need to involve others to contribute valuable data on a consistent basis. This is where it really comes down to, is sharing the load, different disciplines, bringing them together, gaining from each other, having this together on one platform. This is where really the difference happens. So I talked a lot about platform now. Last slide before I think I go into a demo and show you a little bit more around in the tool and how I see the world, how BIC design and EA and potentially a little bit of automation execution can play together. So that's our platform, right? So, and if you're a customer of ours, and I've seen some attendees of our customers, then you know this, right? So BIC design, this is where everything started, right? From a modeling, accessible, and it's a role-based user access-driven tool. Ideally, out of our view, everyone in your organization needs to be a reader. Processes need to be accessible and needs to be shared and needs to be visible. Enterprise architecture, we talked just about it, that needs to be clearly there. And again, role-based user access, right? So you can decide who has access to the information, who can manage the information, who is the approval flow within there, so that your modelers are actually designing and doing and bringing new technology in, and all of a sudden the enterprise architect sees there's a new technology there where they were not even thinking about or were not even consulted that this comes into this. You know, shadow IT. It's a big topic, but still exists somewhere. Hopefully not that much anymore. So what's this happen? But within here, if you have this all together, you would at least have a chance that the enterprise architect gets informed there's a new entry in your catalog and it needs to be approved. So that could be a conversation starter in there. And then as well, natively on the same platform is your process execution. So when you're actually playing in a safe environment, innovate or optimize, and then within the optimization, you go down the automation route, you can actually play this through and see actually, does this work and how does this work and what's actually needed without interrupt your operations right a second. So this is definitely possible when you have everything in there. Process mining by Abramor, there's where we have this close relationship to one of the best data mining tools to my knowledge, and what I have seen over the years is definitely world class, which brings the deep truths in applications to the forefront. And then we can bring this back into the process design and then working with this. Just a little bit from a data mining and from the involvement there. They are just in the last steps to go to market with a task mining. So this is one layer down. So this comes really to keystrokes and how people perform the task, which is the from the activity and the task underneath. And then as well a compliance center. So how do we actually bringing our risks valuable into our data mining and bringing rules into our data mining and identifying and pointing out and potentially triggering, not potentially, triggering a workflow in our GRC model that something needs to happen and validate. So if you have a data breach, if you have a compliance breach, this needs to trigger something, but therefore data mining and task mining will help you to make this work. So that's super exciting. And then governance, risk, and compliance. a lot of big organizations have something up and running, but there is always this aim to have this all on one platform. But we are not talking just identifying a risk and a control, because that sits natively within our BIC design. We are talking really enterprise risk management. We are talking risk controls. We are talking sustainability, depending where you want to go with this. Okay, enough of words now. I want actually to go into the tool. Give me 1 second. I will pull this over in a second. I just need to refresh my screens, because out of security, this was clearly expired by now. But okay, give me 1 second. It's still working on the side. You get at least the minute which you haven't had before as a break. Okay, I pull this into the screen. So if you are looking here, so if you haven't seen this, this is BIC design. This is where our platform starts. This is the view from an end user. So this is a landing page. So I'm logged in as an administrator, but the end user is a reader, and I could simulate this as well within the tool as an administrator to see what's my end user can actually see. But because of time and a little bit of convenience, I stay in as an administrator. My BIC is it's a landing page. You can clearly have different viewpoints here depending what you are interested in yourself. So you can make your favorites, you can bring this to your forefront of your attention, but your governance model could say every single one from you guys need to have a proper landing page, so a process portal. So if I click on this, this could be your entry point to the process world. And if my internet is not too slow, then we are getting there. So, and from here, I can combine this then into the different scenarios. This is completely flexible, right? You can make this your own look and feel. This could be different layers. If I go now through the process world here, and this should work how I want to work it. Yeah, it goes now into my taxonomy, and within the taxonomy, I can now go through there. Again, super flexible, easy to integrate, and so on. So this is one way to see the world, and we clearly have as well to see the world with a structured approach within process groups and subgroups and scenarios, and we have potential frameworks. APQC comes to mind, ITIL, all of these scenarios are there. What a great thing is, we have different places to play in. So we have a public workspace, we have a preview space, and we have a publication space. This is where we public workspace, that's where we design. We are doing things, it's in a very controlled environment. Then we are submitting for approval, it goes into preview, we can have commitment, we have comments, we can share, we can do all of these things. And then it hits publication. And then it goes to the reader. So as a reader, as a consumer of information, that's the only thing what I see. I don't see get all the noise from the other side. So that's really handy. So I just want to show you one thing in here. If we are going, for example, to a process in our core processes, and I open this up and go into sales, and we are going to something like create an offer. So now I'm in the application, I create an offer and navigating to my process, and I can play with the information. I see the information. I have more details on the right-hand side. That gives me a lot of idea. So this is quite boring if you're an existing customer, because you know this, right? So, and there are a lot of benefits, and I can click on here. I can see a race review, super beneficial when we are talking about who's responsible, accountable. This comes automatically when you model a process. But more exciting is as well the execution view. This is for the end user. Think about what an end user wants to do. They want to execute the process. They want to understand, what do I do first, second, third, and I go through this view. And if I hit a decision point or a decision or need to make a call, then I click on this little icon here, and I can make my call. And depending what I choose, depends the roles or the steps, what goes behind. So that's awesome, right? But what we can do as well, what I said, innovation. We don't want to interrupt here. We have different repositories. So you can have multiple repositories with different viewing rights, with different access rights. So if I go here to my repository, business process management and enterprise architecture management, there we have now enterprise architecture combined sitting in here. I still have the same capability with my BIC and have the access to all the information, but I get different catalog items. I get different ways how to model a process. So all of these scenarios are actually important. So let's have a look maybe first into the catalog. So the catalogs is really something, you know, every good business process management tool should have and definitely should make a difference. So if I go in here on applications and I want to have just now as an enterprise architect, I just want to look a little bit more for my Microsoft suite. So I just filter on my, if I can spell, this will definitely help, on my micro and bring in my Microsoft applications. And if I look now here on my Outlook and go into the application, now I have my understanding and from my occurrences, I know instantly where do they live. I have my application categories. I have my monitor offer where this is related to. I see my life cycle. I have potentially more information here and so on. So I can build deep information within the single catalog item. But not only that, I can now as well go into my life cycle roadmap. So if I look now here, and we are looking just on our Microsoft suite, we are not looking anywhere deeper, and I can increase here the horizon, what we are looking at, and can go over the different years, what's now my different scenarios in there. If I do this for the whole environment and take my filter out, and go back to my applications. And by the way, we have catalogs for many more other things. I can drive this over my whole application. So I can easily identify where the different scenarios sit. I can easily identify when do we implement this, what's my implementation phase, what's active, what's actually retired, and I can drive this over the whole time frame. This gives me a huge amount of insights. And now it's not for sure the question, is there more reporting? Yes, there is, because we enable as well the integration into Power BI. So not only limiting the data, what comes out of BIC design enterprise architecture, surely that's there, but you could connect multiple other information in there and you can make this information and this report more meaningful for your organization if you want to bring other things in. But we can filter automatically into portfolio optimization, technical alignment, and all of these scenarios through Power BI. So depending how your reporting requirements look like, that's pretty nice. But it doesn't stop there. Natively within the application, we have now our uh, options to filter out really quickly what our application costs will be. And these icons always explain as well where are we integrate this with. So with business capability and lost my brain right a second, we'll come back in a second. Organizational unit, that was what I was looking for. So we can actually filter this really quickly out. So we can actually see here, okay, cost, annual cost from a color scheme, how are we going? I can filter this as well in this view instead of going back. Now we want to have an understanding how's our technical fit. So how are we going through this motion and making this actually usable for you? So this is really where, and many more capabilities within enterprise architecture, because one thing we want to see as well, potentially a visual diagram, how we showcase this. And now I hope that this works how it should work. No, it didn't. There's my preparation failure. Give me 1 second. If I click on the right scenario, that will definitely help. So I'll go back into my demo repository, and I'm pretty sure that should sit there. So for example, I can have then in my favorites then sitting, or can integrate this as well from a viewpoint going through this as a landing page from an ERM perspective. So it's not only integrated in this space, what you saw before, and I can bring this now in different viewpoints. If I show you now from an application point of view, that's classic demo scenario. I'm not getting too fast around this. So this is definitely nicely to integrate and makes this actually happen and easy accessible. So one thing I want to show you when we are talking innovation and how all things come together, and if I go now to my normal repository, because this will be hopefully the most stable scenario, and I create a new process, because this is where I got really reasonable exciting this morning about. So when I go and create a new BPMN scenario, and most of you haven't seen this yet, so I can now go in here and create an report and manage an IT incident. So now I have a capability, and we're talking about innovation. I can use our ARTI, and I have one scenario which I prepared before. I have a Word document where I just wrote a process. That could be an SOP, this could be a document, you name it. So I can just copy, Control C, go back to my ARTI and post this in as information. So I know I say actually, and I don't want to have too much. I could actually pull as well resources which are already there. So that would be applications. But now I create this. So ARTI goes now away and creates my process. As better your description is, as better your output is. But it creates you clearly in a very low time frame on BPMN diagram, where you can either utilize this as an icebreaker, you can utilize this as a template, you can utilize this as an innovation starter. And I'm always a very impatient person when it comes to technology. Here we go. So this is where we really quickly designed a process, right? So it's not too bad. I make this a little bit bigger. Lock-in incident, initial assessment could be a little bit cleaner here. So I could actually check this out and align this now depending on my requirements, or makes this a little bit nicer. So that's our suggested format. I don't like this really sitting there, so I can change this, right? So I can bring now more information in there. So login incident, now I need to write a description. So how annoying is this? I have writer's block. Arti can help, right? So we have a little helper here, and Arti will write you a description how to log an incident. Is this the right wording? Is this the right culture, written culture in your organization? No, but it's a good starting point then to do the changes and making this happen. So if I save this now and check this in, so this is my first starting point. But that's not where the innovation stops, right? So if I need now a scenario where I want to log an incident, I want to make this now really better for us in the future. Right, so second, I know they sent me an email. That's not good enough. So what can we do? Actually, we can actually automate this process. So I can make this here executable. And I say, I want to have this as a start event. And then we can go through the scenario, obviously with the governance and so on. But I leave this for a moment. So I save this and I check this back in. I think I forgot one scenario. Just give me a second. So now I have my little play agent. But one thing what I forgot, and I need to do this because otherwise this will not work. So if I highlight this now, I make this an user task, user activity. So what this allows me now is actually to create a form. So I'm create an online form, and now I have a form creator where it actually brings automatically the description in and let Arti do this. So I don't need to retype this, but I could retype this with a certain requirements on the form, how it's designed. but it builds my form in seconds, and I have a clear understanding, okay, this is now how automation could work. And this is my form I can create. So obviously you need to be licensed for the different execution side of things. This is not the limit of execution, just having a form and going through there. There is capability through API connectivity, moving data from A to B, having trigger points. This can be started manual, this can be started system generated, and so on. So there is true innovation in there. And then clearly I can change scenarios in here. I can, if I want to customize this to my logo, I can bring HTML formats in here. I can bring JSON files and stuff like this. So all of this is possible, but then we are leaving this low code, no code. But when you think about, you want to give the power into a decentralized process management, and in your IT department or in your finance department, you need to have a quick approval flow with records and auditable scenario, and you want to have as a start event a form where this is requested. It's super easy. So this is definitely, I find this extremely exciting to go through this motion and make this happen. Within Arti, one thing I forgot, what I found super exciting as well is when we are looking for roles and responsibilities, right? So you are starting fresh, blank, right? No roles, no responsibilities are actually there. And I can now go actually into my roles catalog. Here we go. And can actually uh, get Arti creating my roles for me. So I can actually build roles. Let's say, please type a name. So I want to have university HR roles in here, and then I want to create the catalog items. So Arti goes now away and will create my scenarios in the background. Just a little bit on time. So there's many, many more things what can be done and will be done within artificial intelligence. And we have always at the forefront of our mind how we make things safe and pulling information instead of pushing information. But watch the space. So there's definitely scenarios which will come in the future, and our roadmap looks really great. The big step for us is the move to this user experience, what you user interface, user experience, what you just witnessed. So we are just literally on the last couple of weeks or some weeks away from switching the old user interface. If you are a customer or have seen BIC before, you know what I'm talking about. This is our new future. Maybe one last thing when we are talking innovation, and you might or might not have seen this, one of our customers communicate process in a tube style. So a London Tube engine. So instead of having folders and groups, it's more like your London Tube. So you could actually do this, right? So everything in here is your different functions, departments, where it overlaps becomes your handovers, but you could navigate then as well from here to the processes and makes this actually interactable and being there where you need to be. So this is really where I think you need to think about communication. And I have seen now over the first 8 months of my journey here at GBTEC, a lot of great scenarios how customers present processes and how they go ahead with processes. Okay, I want to jump back into the presentation because I have one or two things more to talk, and one thing which I found quite exciting, and if I find my slide where I want to go to, before I do this, just a couple of names, a couple of brands, a couple of use cases where it's used for. So you see instantly it's not limited, it's not related to one industry. So give it a clear go and understand the power of a really good connected platform. I was always very fan of point solutions and doing point solutions really well, but we need clearly to understand scenarios. How can we serve everything the right way? If we have just a focus on our how-to level 4 or 5 processes and forget a proper communication of our end-to-end processes, it becomes challenging. If we can't demonstrate to our decision stakeholders how our customer journey works and makes this understandable and touch points and so on, it becomes really a challenge. So as soon as I need to stretch too far, I might have not the right tool in play. I might need to look into my requirements, what I need and how I can grow. So that's definitely important. There's a question in the chat which I found quite interesting and I want to pick up. The catalog structure is based on ISO 9001, how it relates to the different areas of the business, e.g. sales, engineering, etc. So the catalogs is a preset of, I call it boxes, buckets, where you put information in, your roles, your responsibilities, your units, your applications, and so on, your norms, your requirements, and so on. These become then accessible for the creator of models and for the architects to analyze where it's used from an architecture perspective, who is using it, what's being done, being reportable. But then as well, from a modeler perspective, creator of information, I can pull this out of the catalogs and use this. So you ensure that you're building in your catalogs standards where everyone uses the same scenario and not inventing different things. The most simple example, what I can think of, someone creates HR manager, next moment someone comes in and creates manager HR. There's no standard, and standard and quality is a big no-no. One thing I definitely didn't talk about this, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the innovation and optimization game. Surely we can build variations and simulation of time, cost, material cost, and so on within BIC design. It's really important to understand this. Variation comes into the play of different operations in overseas, slightly different models. My personal experience with this was Toyota was always selling Toyota finance products, Lexus, and they even offered for different brands finance in there as well. With this in mind, you have potentially a very different operation when a Lexus customer comes back compared to a Corolla customer comes back. So that's where variation becomes quite important. Careful on variation because variation can be expensive if it's not dealt correctly with. And just because you can, it's not a reason for variation. If we are, there's one question which I find quite interesting and I'll put it out there. Are there any limitations on enhancements? Not sure where to take this to. For me, there's no limitations on our imagination. It's a budget problem, right? It's always like time and money and cost. And that brings me perfectly to the next and last session, and it doesn't take too long. Sine triangle. So what I said at the very beginning when I talked about the agenda, why is Thomas talking about the iron triangle? But it's actually quite important because how process maturity impacts the iron triangle becomes quite an interesting scenario. If you're not familiar with the iron triangle, this comes really out of the project management space. And many years ago, I was responsible for building up an PMO and discussing with an 8 people strong executive team for literally 2+ months what's the project. Unbelievable, but it happened because the reason was no one wanted to fall under a project framework because there were rules, there were documents to fill out, everyone pushed back. No, this business as usual. Now we can do this differently. Now that's too small. That's not a project, because you want to manage your projects in a project portfolio management platform or into tools. And by the way, when I was responsible for it, I had to check to buy a platform. I decided to go with Excel because at the time we were only able to run 6 projects at the time because of limitation of resource. When you're talking about this iron triangle, we're talking about time, cost, and scope. So anything what you're doing in the transformation space, in the improvement space, if it's small, in the Toyota world, we called it only just do it, or quick kaizens, which is really defined by it's in my operational responsibility. It doesn't affect anyone else. I can just do it, but I need to document it that others can learn from it. As soon as it becomes cross-functional or bigger, it became a Kaizen, which was defined as a 90-day project. With this then in mind, there's always a relation to time, cost, and scope. So we always have these 3 components. And when you have been involved in different projects and thinking about scope creep, so the scope changes what we want to achieve because one executive sees, oh, we can do this and this and this with a new system, and pulls the scope out, then your time and cost goes up because it takes longer and it costs more because I have the project team longer together and potential external resources on site. You know, these things are actively connected. If you have delays because of deliveries are not done or of a lazy project manager and he didn't do the documentation, the scope and cost pulls out as well because it takes longer. So this is all connected. How does this come into the process maturity? How does that come into the process world? So my viewpoint on this is really the time is mature processes can reduce time, right? Because it's better when you start a project and you know exactly what are you doing right the second, or you have already designed the best process you can, because there's a theory out there now that we shouldn't do as is processes or current state processes anymore. We should actually start with the to be process to innovate new. I think it has something to it, but I'm not 100% sure if it's ready or right for everyone. It just needs to be aligned because I think there's a comfort factor to know what we do currently and then can fall back to this when we develop something new. But as better your processes are, as clean, as improved, efficiency, as better is your start point. So that reduces clearly the time. And then when you can then accurate your estimation and your resources and so on, I'm only able to measure this correctly if I have my processes right, because otherwise it's judging. And in the biggest project I was involved, this was an asset finance management system replacement. After 3 months already in the project, we discovered there were a couple of databases which were sitting on Lotus Notes, which was in-house developed, were just overseen. This increased the project by 3 months because the vendor needed to look into this and we needed to decide how we're dealing with this, how we're bringing this information and capability in. These things happen, but you need to be prepared and build in contingency in there. And then scope as well, right? What's to do and what's not to do. And that's the hardest thing sometimes. And I've seen a lot of leaders over my lifetime who change their mind. And you have to have a strong project sponsor who needs to always remind the upper level that's in scope, that's out scope. And if you want to bring this in scope, there's a change request and there is an impact of time, scope, or cost. So this is all connected. So this becomes clearly super important. And then when we break this down into the how does this positively impact is really this increase the predictability. Sorry, lost in translation here. Improved your control. So that's definitely super important. Enhanced adaptation and enables you to a better user acceptance testing process is super important for user acceptance testing. Just think about how you communicate the new normal into your workforce. That's very important, and drives a clear, better quality. As better you are documented, and I'm not talking about diagrams which have 50 activities in there or documents which are 50 pages thick. You need to align this to the best, to your capabilities, to the best communication strategy, to your workforce. Look into your age of the workforce. Look into what the workforce looks like in 5 or 10 years' time. How do you communicate there? Are they more remote? Are they on site? Are you having proper communication channels? A company I worked for, we had Teams, we had Zoom, we had Slack, we had um, something else, I forgot. We had 5 or 6 scenarios in there. Outlook. But it wasn't clear what's our official communication channel. Where do we have a record? So these sort of things becoming actually quite confusing if you have people, 1,000 people workforce around the world communicating right, left, center. Just some food for thought. Okay, before we finish up, a couple of further resources. What we offer, obviously, webinars, events, that's always on our forefront, and how we want to share opinions. And that's part of my role, to go out there and maybe being a little bit provocative and going a little bit against the mainstream, but I try to align as well. Having success stories, you definitely can have access. This is Global Success Story Center Academy. If you are 100% subscribed, there are a lot of really great online tools. There are a couple of, or there are some free versions on this, which gives you a really good start. The product tour is clearly available on you, and then white paper. We're just working on a really good research, which comes out in the next couple of days. And that's awesome. Just seeing what's the state of the nation and what's what we are talking about. So that's definitely a good thing. Okay, a couple of questions in here. One interesting question, and Jason Gons, our VP of Sales, and I just had a conversation about this yesterday. Do you foresee process mining can eventually take over BPM? Process design in our case, in the future, especially with AI and the ability to record, monitor, and map out processes automatically. It's a very interesting standpoint, and I think it has potential. But when we are thinking about manual work, when we are thinking about how decision is made in organization, globally, locally, small, medium enterprise, we are not even close to the moment where we eliminate the human being. And we are still far away from paperless, I want to say. So another good example of, oh yeah, we will go all paperless. I would say not yet, and I can't see this happening over the next 5, maybe 10 years away. No one knows really the capability of AI, where it will develop. Currently, I think we are talking every 7 months, it doubles on capability. So we will get there somewhere or another. But I'm still strongly believe we will see different tools than classic process mining. Because we need to have then task mining, and we need to monitor what the task within the activities actually looks like. And our human behavior and an AI agent makes decisions. And if I'm working on one activity, does that mean I work now through a sequence of 10 tasks? Or do I jump after task 3 to a different activity and do something else? My brain works definitely this way. I focus on delivering my output, but then something, whatever reason is the trigger, comes in my mind, and I do something else. And I come back to this end quickly. This keeps me on my feet and keeps my brain fresh. And everyone is different, right? So focus and how we focus will be always different. Hopefully that answers the space. I don't think so there's a clear yes or no in there, but it's definitely something to look out for. There was a question of collaboration and scenarios, and that's one thing what reminds me that I wanted to pull in, but I didn't. But I will do this now because that's a really good point. So if I come back into our BIC design tool, what I wanted to show you, we can actually integrate seamlessly if you have full reader license into a SharePoint environment. And it's not a static picture. So this gives you actually a dynamic view into the process and into the capability of the process. And as an end user, I can choose from here quite easily. I want to see the execution and execute my process, or I want to have the diagram, or I want to give some certain feedback on the capability. So I can actually do this within SharePoint. I need reader rights on this. I can do this a little bit more static as well, but that's definitely a capability which is there. And for me, it's always like process should be accessible for everyone and should be there and should be easy to do. Another question came in here. I think it's difficult to influence stakeholders using the BIC tool. It's not about the tool. Sorry to be that frank. The tool is your enabler, right? And exposing stakeholders to a technical tool, sometimes they are really into it, and sometimes as soon as you open a tool, they do something else. I had a boss, as soon as he was disinterested or lost his interest, he looked at his phone, and it became really like a joke, a little bit like, okay, I lost you, too much detail. And this is sometimes the case, right? So identify stakeholders, to influence and persuade stakeholders comes down to EQs, right? Comes down to how do I talk? How is my receiver? What's their communication way? So think about this way. Some people like socializing, other people like coming directly to the point. So therefore, think about how can you convince or how can you communicate. And this might be outside tool and presenting this on a PowerPoint or on a slide or in a nice conversation over coffee. All right, so I get a little bit of warning because we are 2 minutes before the full hour. And if I can navigate here my screen properly, that would be definitely help. See if this works on my other screen. No. Okay. You will get a survey. You will get a follow-up from Selena, who organized this everything. And thank you for this. Our marketing support is absolutely fantastic in this scenario. We used this tool Vista the first time, so a couple of hiccups, but I learn and I will review to make this better next time. Please take the time and go through the scenario and give me some feedback, and don't be shy on this. I want it needs to be real, and I need to give definitely a little bit slicker sometimes on the breaks, but I'm really passionate about the topic. I like to talk about it. I'm not liking too much listening to my own voice, but hey, that's sometimes the case. Hopefully you took something away from today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm pretty sure we will cross paths in the future. Take care, stay safe, and happy process management and happy modeling. Talk soon, and thank you for your time. Goodbye.